Memories slam against my head like waves against a jagged shore, sharp, relentless, mixing with the lack of sleep and the rawness in my throat. The chill outside bit at me, but somehow those same memories kept me warm in a way that was almost cruel, reminding me what it was like to feel connected, to laugh, to matter. Friendship, that old, messy, beautiful thing. And here you are again, back to hear more. I don't blame you. I'm sorry if it's not as cohesive or as exciting as some of the other stories you've heard. I wish for the life of me that there was no story at all, that none of this had ever happened. But I'll continue where I left off. It started with a phone call. I wanted to ignore the call. I almost did. The phone buzzed late, too late for anything decent to be calling. And for a moment, I hesitated, caught somewhere between curiosity and the stubbornness that kept me alone for months. My thumb hovered above the screen, a small trembling punctuation to all the hesitations, all the evenings I'd spent pretending I didn't care. And the name flashed. Adam. 2 syllables that carried 6 months of silence, and every memory folded into them. I told myself I didn't owe him anything. Ghosts didn't need to talk to the living. But I answered anyway. He sounded loud and warm, easy and careless. That laugh I'd known since the first night we'd met, spilling into the room as if nothing bad had ever touched him. As if all the missteps and the months of distance were just lessons he carried like a frayed coat. That laugh wrapped around the past like sunlight through dirty blinds, and for the first time in months, I felt it too. A faint pulse of something forgotten. Adam's words came quick and casual, explaining that things had been chaotic with moving in with Jen and the chaos of work, that he should have called sooner. But his voice carried the weight of old friendship, the sense that the bond we shared, the constellation of people orbiting each other in laughter and late nights still mattered. He reminded me that I was a part of that I had played a role in building something real. And even now, part of the happiness he had, Jen, the apartment, the stability, was tied to the crew I had helped form. He invited me to a small housewarming, a board game night with real friends, not an Instagram echo, a gathering of those who mattered. I hesitated, offering weak excuses, letting the weight of months of solitude fight against the pull of something familiar. But I knew he had reminded me gently, yet insistently, that I had been a part of building this, part of making it real. I arrived at the brownstone apartment, standing outside for a moment before pressing the doorbell. The building had the charm of old brick and wood floors, red and worn. The kind of space that reminded you that life still moved somewhere, even if it had slowed for you. Light spilled from the second-story windows, faint laughter spilling out with it. The door opened almost immediately, and Adam greeted me with a hug that carried years of familiarity. A smile that made the months of distance dissolve. He smelled like whiskey and his usual cologne. a reminder that some things don't change, even when everything else did. I stepped inside and took in the apartment, the soft yellow light, the plants lining the walls, the books scattered and stacked, the faint scent of cinnamon in the air. Adam poured 2 shots of Fireball, joking and teasing, grounding us both in memories of old bar nights, late-night drives, and absurd karaoke mishaps that ended in laughter. The small chaos. The shots burned like a memory I hadn't realized I'd been holding, and I allowed myself to feel it, the subtle thrill of being in a space that once felt like home. Our conversation unfolded slowly. I kept my guard up at first, careful with my words, weighing them against the ease Adam carried. He gently coaxed me back into rhythm, bringing up old movie nights that stretched into dawn, camping trips with marshmallows burnt beyond recognition, and the careless joy of youth that seemed to stick to the air of that apartment. Each story was a brushstroke, painting the world that I had been away from for months. And slowly, the tension in my chest eased. I felt myself leaning into it, letting the room carry me, letting the warmth of familiarity seep in. Jen arrived, stepping lightly into the apartment after a quick run for ice. Carrying a calm energy that seemed to smooth over the last remaining edges of discomfort. She moved with quiet assurance, smiling at me, as if to say it was all right that months had passed, that everything could still fit together in some way. And then a girl appeared behind her. Isla, a subtle force, observing and laughing softly, her presence commanding without intrusion. Her green eyes caught mine for a moment, steady and curious. Long brown hair framing a face that seemed to glow under the kitchen light, drawing me in without words. Adam introduced us and we shook hands. Before my awkwardness could settle in, he was filling up glasses and ushering us into the living room. He explained the rules for Cards Against Humanity, with house rules that punished failure with drinks. The ridiculous of the stipulations somehow making the room feel more our own. The first few rounds were tentative, laughter cautious but warming, a careful easing into the rhythm of connection. Then Isla started picking my cards, again and again, without fail. And I reciprocated automatically, finding a quiet satisfaction in the unspoken exchange. Her choices, the way she watched me, the subtle smirk that tried to hide amusement. It felt like a silent conversation that didn't need words. As the rounds continued, she kept winning. The second round was the same, her choices as precise and playful as before. It wasn't just a game anymore. It was a bridge, a quiet understanding being built in real time. Every laugh, every exchange of cards, every small victory became a reminder that the months of distance could be dissolved by a few hours of presence, by the simplest acts of recognition. Jen watched, amused, commenting lightly on how unfair it was to have 2 against everyone else. Adam grinned, shaking his head at the effortless ease unfolding between us. The alcohol and the warmth of the room. The alcohol and the warmth of the room carried us. The alcohol and the warmth of the room carried us, breaking down the lingering barriers of months. By the end of the second round, Isla had won again, and I laughed with her, feeling the tension in my shoulders ease. The room had shifted subtly. What had begun as a hesitant gathering of friends, cautious and polite, had become a reunion of familiarity and the subtle spark of a new connection. The rhythm of old friendship and the glimmer of something new coalesced into something solid, easy, a quiet joy I hadn't realized I'd been craving. Adam's eyes caught mine briefly, knowing and teasing in the way only he could. He didn't need words. The game had been enough. The bridge had been built. I could feel myself exhaling, letting the weight of the months drift off with each laugh, each card played, each sip of a drink. I wasn't thinking about the past anymore. I wasn't thinking about loneliness or the quiet ache that had followed me for months. I was here, in this room, with them, and for the first time, in a long time, I felt I belonged. By the end of the third round, Jen rose to the kitchen for a round of drinks, and on instinct I followed, taking the empty glasses. The kitchen smelled faintly of citrus and alcohol, a combination that made me realize just how long it had been since I'd actually felt part of a space like this. Messy, vibrant, alive. Jen had gone to make a new round of cocktails, and I trailed behind her, feeling that familiar tug of awkwardness, the weight of half a year's absence pressing into my shoulders. She moved with that casual confidence of someone who belonged, arms folding as she leaned against the counter, smiling at me in that careful way that seemed to understand the exact mix of nerves and curiosity I was carrying. It got weird, she admitted without preamble, and I could see it in her eyes, soft, almost pained. When Adam and I started dating, the group shifted, you know? Things weren't the same, and I didn't handle it well. I let the group drift. I wish I hadn't. She shrugged lightly, but the tension lingered in the small lift of her shoulders, the way her hands pressed against the counter steadying herself. I missed you. I missed what we had. I hesitated, trying to find some space in my voice for a response, some measure of the words I wanted to say. Instead, I just nodded. There was too much, and yet too little to express. The memory of laughter in smoky bars, the long nights on sticky couches, the awkward quiet of early mornings. It all weighed on me, and I could feel the old melancholy sleeping back. Before I could ask about Sarah, Jen tilted her head, gesturing subtly towards Isla. Her smile was sly but gentle, teasing in a way that she always managed. "It looks like you two are hitting it off," she said. My stomach lurched a little, half embarrassment, half something I didn't quite name. Her eyes sparkled with that knowing mischievousness, and for a second I couldn't look away. "Are you seeing anyone?" she asked casually, and I felt my throat tighten, as if the words carried more gravity than she realized. I laughed softly, a little bitter, the kind of humor that masks defeat. Just the endless parade, swiping right, swiping left, wondering why every date cost more in pride than food. I could feel the color rising in my cheeks at admitting even that much. "It's exhausting." Jen laughed then, that low, familiar sound that always seemed to settle things in the room. "I figured as much," she said, her tone teasing but not cruel. If anyone else had said it, I might have felt insulted. But her laugh carried something more, like understanding. like she already knew the truth of my messiness and was offering it back without judgment. Don't worry about it. You don't need to try to be anything other than yourself. That's always been more than enough. I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. It was relief, the simple unspoken permission to just be. Jen nodded at me once, a small affirmation, and then turned to gather the glasses. We walked back into the living room together, the clink of glass marking the transition back into the space that had already begun to feel familiar again. Adam was waiting, leaning against the couch, with that bright, teasing grin that never seemed to dim. "Ready for another game?" he asked. His eyes flicked at me for a second, and I caught that look, the one that said he knew exactly where I'd been, what I'd been feeling. He poured shots into small glasses, clinking them together once more. "A little round for courage," he said, and I could feel that same old warmth that always followed him in waves. Jen hovered, still playful, still teasing. "I'll warn you," she said as she set the drinks down. "We're doing this one with extra rules. Don't complain." Adam rolled his eyes, muttering about the unfairness of it all, but the teasing rhythm between them, the way they argued and laughed in tandem, felt like home. The game itself was something new, a creation Adam had picked up from a friend of a friend. Mind maze. The concept was simple enough on paper, but the layers of interpretation made each round unpredictable. Each player had secret objective, cards that altered scenarios, and the constant possibility that someone could twist the narrative entirely. It wasn't competitive in the usual sense. It relied on timing. It relied on timing, perception, and the subtle interplay of thought. We set it up on the coffee table, laying out the cards, tokens, the small wooden markers in neat patterns. The first few rounds were clumsy, tentative, the kind of fumbling that happens when people are reacquainting themselves. But Isla and I fell into rhythm quickly. Somehow, without discussing it, we began predicting each other's moves, reading the pauses in thought, the glances that hinted at strategy, the subtle hints in body language. Each round we played together felt like a quiet partnership, a rhythm forming without explicit instruction. Jen and Adam continued their playful banter beside us, arguing over minor rules, whether a token moved first or last, if a card should be discarded or kept hidden. It was lovingly familiar, a living echo of nights spent in smaller apartments, on the floor of bars, or around flickering candlelight in parks. I watched them, caught between nostalgia and new beginnings, and it hit me just how much these spaces had always carried the weight of our friendship. Isla leaned towards me slightly, nudging the empty spot next to the couch. Her green eyes sparkled under the soft lamplight. "Like it or not," she said in a playful voice, "I guess we're a team." Her smile disarmed me, a combination of warmth and challenge. I hesitated, aware of the odd cocktail of feelings twisting inside me. But the gesture in the moment felt easy. I moved to sit, careful not to rush or seem eager, and she offered a quiet nod, satisfied. The next round began. Cards flipped, tokens moved, each act deliberate, yet infused with that unpredictable human element. The alcohol, the music, the conversation with Jen in the kitchen, it all coalesced into a sense of rhythm. With each round, Isla and I continued to anticipate each other's moves. By the end of the second round, she had emerged victorious, laughing quietly as I raised my glass in mock defeat. I could tell she was genuinely delighted, not just in winning, but in the playful exchange that had carried us through the round. The third round began much the same. The pattern persisted, the quiet synchronicity between us becoming more pronounced. I realized, almost in relief, I was enjoying myself without the nagging weight of past regret. My conversation with Jen in the kitchen, the small confessions, the reminders of our history, the gentle guidance had cleared a path back to something lighter, something easy. I laughed with Isla, argued about strategy, teased over missteps. The rhythm of it all felt effortless. We had taken a break halfway through the third round, and I'd realized we'd been talking for nearly an hour without pause. Her voice, the subtle laughter, the teasing banter, it was comforting. A rare connection in a world I had been teaching myself to navigate with distance. I found myself sharing ideas about books, theories of storytelling, philosophical concepts that had once felt too abstract to voice aloud. She knew them. She argued with delight, adding her own perspectives, laughing at my stubborn insistence on the details of a plot or a character's motivation. The hours slipped by unnoticed. Adam caught sight of us, a slight grin playing on his lips. His eyes met mine briefly across the table, the expression unmistakable. Our boy is back in the game. He returned to the rules with Jen, their banter now a background hum. The tension of old relationships softened by the shared space and the alcohol-infused warmth. We continued to play, the game expanding with the energy of the group. Isla and I navigated the rounds with ease. Each decision and card chosen a conversation in itself, a dialogue that needed no words. Jen brought over the new cocktails. Adam poured himself another shot, and the rhythm of the room solidified. An old harmony reawakened, tempered by time and absence. The playful arguments continued on the other side of the table. Jen rolled her eyes, grinning. Their laughter intertwined with the background music, low but persistent, almost like a heartbeat. The room felt alive again, and I embraced it. I realized that this warmth, the laughter, the quiet moments of connection, was exactly what I had been missing, exactly what I hadn't known I'd needed. By the end of the third round, the room felt almost suspended, a pocket of old magic in a world that had otherwise moved on. I glanced at Isla. She smiled at me, that small, steady acknowledgement of shared understanding, the kind of look that says more than words ever could. I returned it, a bridge from the sadness of months past into the possibility of something resembling joy. And just then, as we were settling into the fourth round, a knock came. 3 sharp raps at the door. Deliberate. Heavy. It reverberated through the apartment, cutting through the laughter, the music, and the faint clicking of glass. The warmth of the room, the sense of rhythm, and the comfort shivered. We all froze, the sudden intrusion slicing through the illusion of safety. Isla's green eyes flickered toward the door, her expression unreadable, almost expectant. She returned her gaze to me for a fraction of a second, a quiet acknowledgement that this was something neither of us could have anticipated. The room held its breath. The game paused. The night tilted and the warm bubble of our reunion was pierced by a deliberate, insistent knock. The world outside the walls of Adam's apartment suddenly felt distant, and yet right here, in the pause, in the stillness. I felt that stirring of fear, the one we had never fully named, the one that would pull the story into a story worth remembering. It was only a knock, but it carried everything.
Hey everyone, this is Jay Taylor. I am the narrator of Dante's Disciples and the writer for the story. I really appreciate you guys checking it out. We've got about 2 more parts to this story. Really excited for part 4 and finalizing the detail and really introducing the sneak, what it is and what it's capable of doing. I really appreciate you guys hanging out. If you like the story, please feel free to subscribe and like and share so we can get this channel to growing. But I'm going to earn it, so I'm going to get back to writing and get the new story out to you. Thanks.